Good afternoon, all of you. Welcome to CBSE class. Now you all know myself very well. Still, I'll give you just a brief introduction of myself. So I am Akash. Okay, I am the chemistry master teacher at CBSE class. Okay, now today I am in front of all of you just to share a very important information. As you can see it in my background. Okay, that today we'll be discussing about some important CBSE board guidelines and some rules, along with some very important tips and tricks regarding your 10th board exams. Okay, so this video is very important for all our 10th boarders. Okay, so just listen it carefully. Okay, now let's start with some important board guidelines. Now why I'm saying that these guidelines are important, because as you are already knowing that due to our NEP 2020, that means our new education policy, CBSE has made significant changes in our 10th board exams rules. Okay, now what are those significant changes that you must know before attempting your board exams? Okay, now board exams are coming very near. Okay, it's starting from 17th Feb. Okay, now you already know the dates, that it will start from 17th Feb and it will end on 11th of March. Okay, so now what are those important rules? So the first and the foremost important rule that we'll discuss here is about the two exam system that has been introduced by the CBSE first time. Okay, in your class 10 board exams, only for 10 boarders. Okay, not for 12. Okay, so what is the two exam policy? Now CBSE has introduced this two exam policy to reduce some pressure that is getting on the students, especially those 10th board exam students who are giving their board exams first time. Okay, so what does this rule say? This rule says that you all will be having your first phase of these board exams, okay, starting on 17th of Feb, that will be end on 11th of March. Okay, so that is a mandatory phase for all the students, for all the 10th board students. But if you want, then for all the students, there will be one more chance for your score improvement. So if you want, you can opt for the subject improvement exam in the second phase of the board cycle that CBSE is planning to execute in May this year. Okay, now there is not much information regarding that second phase, but till now what information we have is that this first phase is mandatory for all the 10 board students, but that second phase, that subject improvement phase, will be optional, and that will be available for only those students who want to improve their scores in any particular subject. So they have that option that best of the two exam score will be considered as their final exam result. Okay, but there is no update regarding any change in marking scheme or any change in syllabus for that phase 2, okay, or for that second exam cycle. So right now there is no information regarding that. Okay, so till now you have to just concentrate in your this first phase examination. Okay, and as soon as we'll be getting more information on that, we'll be sharing it with you. Okay, now the second important rule is your mandatory 75% attendance rule. Now that rule is very important. Why? Because as you all know that rule is already mandatory since last so many years. But schools as well as students do not take that so much seriously. But now you have to take that seriously. Why? Because now this 75% mandatory attendance rule has been linked with your internal assessment. So as you all know, your internal assessment marks are very important regarding your final scores. Okay, it boosts your percentage in your 10 board exams. So now that internal assessment mark is directly related to your attendance. Okay, because as you all know, now the CBSE is considering board as a 2-year cycle. So for 10 board students, they will consider the cycle as 9th and 10th. For 12 board students, they will consider the cycle as 11th and 12th. So now in those 2 years, in 9th and 10th, your class presentation, now how much you have been attentive in the class, your attendance, your periodic test marks, okay, as well as your assignments, okay, and your practical assessment marks or your projects. All that will be considered in your internal assessment. So now CBSE is giving more emphasis to this internal assessment. So now you can't take it lightly anymore. Okay, so you have to, from now onwards, okay, all those students, even class 9 students, those who are hearing me, you have to take these internal assessments very seriously. Okay, And for 10 students, I hope you will be scoring very good in your internal assessments as well. Okay, now moving on, there is some documentation update also regarding your APAR IDs. Now, if someone is not knowing about APAR ID is a unique identification for all the students appearing in board exams. Okay, now this APAR ID must be linked before that list of documents or list of candidates that schools are submitting to the CBSE. Now, schools have to make sure that every student's APAR ID is linked as per CBSE guidelines. Okay, why this APAR ID concept has been introduced by CBSE? Just to make sure that the documentation of all the students, okay, that record keeping must be very fine, so that these will help students in their higher studies. Okay, and apart from this, there are some strict rules that has been introduced by CBSE as per their guidelines for any kind of you can say malpractices like cheating or XYZ. So now there are some important rules regarding that. For example, 2-year ban has been introduced by CBSE for those students who will be finding cheating using electronic gadgets. So that is very harsh rule. Okay, so now you have to take care of all these things. Okay, and 3-year ban has been introduced by CBSE for those students who have been fined leaking any online content of CBSE online. Okay, so now some of these stricter rules has been, disciplinary rules has been introduced by CBSE for those students who try to use malpractices. Okay, so now these are some important rules. Okay, and some SOPs also has been introduced by CBSE regarding your practical exams. Okay, so now schools have to update these practical assessment marks very promptly as soon as your practical exams are over. And as you all know, that the practical exam duration is your January and mid-Feb. Now, I hope that most of you, almost all of you have already given your practical exams. Okay, now if some of you have not given, then take these exams very seriously. Okay, because this will help you in boosting your final scores very promptly. Okay, because all these things are now taken in a very serious manner by our CBSE board. Okay, so this was all about some guidelines and some rules. Okay, some are new, some you already know. Okay, now there are some guidelines regarding what materials you can carry to the examination center and all of that. Okay, so now you have to use transparent pouches. Okay, you can't take those colored pouches. Okay, now you can only take water bottles along with it, and some important stationery that is allowed by the CBSE. Not much you can take along with yourself while going to the examination center. Okay, so now all these rules you must take care while appearing for your upcoming board exams. Now, in this video, before ending it, we'll discuss some important tips and tricks also regarding your 10th CBSE exams. Okay, so I'll be just giving you some important tips and tricks. Some of you must already know. Some of the tricks might be new to you all. Okay, so these tricks are basically related to all the subjects, specifically to PCMB, that is your physics, chemistry, maths and biology. Okay, so now let's do it one by one. Now, before starting with the subject wise tips and tricks, some basic tips for how to attempt your board exam or how to approach your board exam. Now, make sure that don't panic while preparing in the last days for your board exams. Okay, just make sure if you are preparing in a right manner, if your timetable is right, if you are focusing on your weaker subjects or comparatively weak subjects in a proper manner, then you don't have to panic. You don't have to worry. Okay, just go on with your preparation, have confidence, keep yourself calm as much as possible. Always remember, students, now boards are not anything that is meant for excellence. That means if you are an excellent student, then only you can score good in boards. Okay, it requires strategy and calmness. Okay, now those little strategies that we make for ourselves, okay, depending upon how our nature is, okay, that decides how great can we come out with our results. Okay, now discussing about subject to subject tips and tricks. Now let's start with first physics. So if I'll start with physics, now in physics, some important tips which I want to give you, okay, before you will be attempting your paper. Now, as you are having your science paper in which you will be having 3 different sections, physics, chemistry and biology. Now, you all know that 15 minutes are given to you for just as your reading time. In that time, you can't write anything. Okay, so that 15 minutes reading time is very important regarding that what you will write in those upcoming 3 hours. Okay, so you can't waste those 15 minutes. Okay, so in those 15 minutes, how can you maximize those 15 minutes to score big? So now, whenever you get a question paper of any subject, okay, let's take it of science, then first of all, go through the MCQ section. Okay, first of all, go through the MCQ section, because that section is quite easy and it will take very less time to observe what questions has been asked in your MCQs. Okay, now why you have to start with MCQ section? Just go through the MCQ section to see whether this section is easy as per your expectation or it is somewhat hard. Okay, now after that, go to your case-based questions. Why to case-based questions? Because case-based questions has long paragraphs. Now you have to read that, so you can utilize this reading time in seeing your case-based questions, whether these questions are quite easy to solve or it will take much time. Okay, now after that, go through once your 2 marks, 3 marks and 4 marks questions also, but concentrate on these 2 topics at the earliest. Okay, now if you find your case-based questions or your MCQs quite easy to solve, okay, then start with your section A only. In any subject, start with that MCQs only. So in any subject, in that reading time, first go through those sections or those topics which requires long time to read. Okay, so that you can consume these 15 minutes in reading those questions which will take much time later. So that it will help you in deciding that you can start your paper from which section. So that is very important, because in the first 30 to 45 minutes, whatever you will solve, that will give you confidence, that will boost your morale in solving the whole paper in a much concise and precise manner. Okay, and always remember, you don't have 3 hours to solve the paper, you only have 2 hours 45 minutes. Just keep last 15 minutes for checking the whole paper, for going through the whole paper once, if any question you have left in between, okay, or if there is something you need to correct, okay, or if there is something that you have to update. So just left these 15 minutes for checking, okay, or for revision. So try to solve that paper in 2 hours 45 minutes. Plan it before, that in particular subjects, if I'll start with section A, how much time I'll dedicate to my MCQs, how much time I'll give to very short answers, how much time I'll give to short answers, and so on. Okay, so plan it accordingly as per which subjects you prefer as easy to you and which subjects you find little difficult. Okay. Now, while solving, now this was about science or theory-based papers. Now, now there are some more points, like whether in physics or chemistry or biology, especially in biology, you have diagrams. Okay, now use only pencils to draw these diagrams. Okay, don't use pen to draw these diagrams. If there is a difference between that is asked in your exams, now make the difference between in a table only. Don't write it in simple points. Make the difference between in a table. These are some small points that we mostly forgot, especially in pressure situations when we appear for our exams. So these points we have to remember. Okay, always while getting an answer for a numerical, whether in physics, okay, or in mathematics, just circle the answer or put it in a box. Highlight the answer always, because evaluators always search for these answers only, okay, while checking. Okay, so if you feel confident, just circle these answers, highlight those important points, highlight the formulas. Okay, while solving numericals, especially in physics, or while solving your mathematics paper, always make sure to write the given, then what is required, what is asked to you, then you must write the formulas. Okay, now finding answers is not as important in a numerical than your step marking. Your step marking contains so much of it. Okay, so even if your steps are right, you'll be able to score good marks even if you do not get the right answer. Okay, in mathematics as well as in your physics numericals. So while solving numericals, make sure if you remember the formula, write what is given, okay, what has been asked, okay, and then try to solve as much as possible. And if in the midway you find yourself getting stuck, then don't waste much time in it if you find it difficult to continue. Okay, just leave some space and just move on. And in those last 15 to 20 minutes, go back, see if you can write something there, or if not, then that empty space, just cut it with a single line. Okay, try to solve your paper, whether it's of any subject, very neatly. Now, it's not possible for anyone that no mistakes will be there. Now, even if you do a mistake somewhere, okay, whether it's in a theory paper or in a maths paper, then cut it with a single line. Okay, don't make it a design there, beta. Okay, that is very important. You have to keep that paper very neat and clean. Now, this is what is I am telling with my personal experience, that in those 32 pages your answer sheet, if the first 8 to 10 pages are very neat and clean, very fine, and most of your answers are correct, then more or less you will be scoring very good marks. Okay, even if you find it difficult to solve the last few questions. Okay, that is my personal experience. So try to start positively any paper which you are preparing for, okay, and then move on accordingly. Okay, and especially in numerical section, okay, don't leave any questions just abruptly. Okay, now there is written in that instruction that answer all the questions. Okay, now we just ignore it, but that is very important. If you're leaving any question just abruptly, that means you are scoring 0 in that subject or in that question. Okay, so for that you have to attempt anything. Okay, there is marks for attempting the question, whether you are solving physics, chemistry, biology or maths, or whether in English, Hindi or social. Okay, so you have to attempt a question in order to give yourself a possibility to score something out of it. Okay, and those little somethings will make your results look very good. Now, much more than what you have expected for. Okay, so now this was all about what I want to share it with you all. Okay, so this was all about some board guidelines, some new rules, okay, which CBSE has introduced, especially for 10 students as you are giving your board exams for the first time. So I think it was my duty and responsibility to introduce you with some of these rules if you wouldn't know it, okay, and some smaller tips and tricks which some of you already know, and if not, then we are always here to help you out. Okay, now that's all for now. Now, if you have liked this video, then please like, share and subscribe, and do connect it with us for such interesting and important videos regarding your 10th board exams.